right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Women in Engineering Finding Your Path event. We're really excited to be hosting this today. This has all kind of been made possible by the School of Engineering, so thank you to the School of Engineering and the Career Service for reaching out and helping us organize this event. I'm Christina, so I'm the engineering representative for Women in STEM, and I'm also the Women in STEM liaison for the Molly Fergusson Initiative. Just before we begin and introduce our wonderful panelists, just wanted to give you a little bit of background on both Molly Fergusson and the Women in STEM Society. So the Molly Fergusson Initiative is basically a group of engineering undergraduates, PhD students, staff, academics who are promoting the visibility of women in the School of Engineering. So we run some networking events and we have lots of resources for women and allies. And I just want to say that this is, although it is to promote women in engineering, we also are happy to have men along or anyone who is also keen to promote women in engineering, because it's not just about women in engineering, we also need our allies. And we have Edinburgh University Women in STEM Society. It promotes, supports, and connects women in STEM. So very similar to the Molly Fergusson Initiative, except kind of spread out all among STEM. So we have all sorts of representatives from different branches of STEM, and we have skills workshops, we have networking events, we run panel events such as these, and our aim is to create a network of members, industry professionals, and academics who can share tips and advice. So there we go. So for this event, this is the schedule for this evening. We're going to have some introductions from each of our panelists. We're going to have quite a while to do our panel questions, 35 minutes-ish, and then we're going to have some audience questions for the last 10 minutes. We're also going to have breakout rooms for the last 20 minutes. One thing I am going to mention is if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or wait until the end and we will be unmuting your microphones, and you can use the raise hand function, which I will explain at the end, but definitely ask any questions. We have 5 amazing panelists who are all very excited to share their journeys and offer their advice. One thing I will say about breakout rooms is if you haven't filled out the form that you received in an email, please message Sarah on Zoom. You can do that by going into participants, and I'll get Sarah to say hello in a second, and just mention your breakout room choice. We'll be introducing each of the panelists, so if you just send Sarah just whoever's name of the room you want to be in, and we'll get that all sorted for you. Otherwise, there will be a possibility of switching rooms. We'll explain that all at the end. But Sarah, if you could say hi to everyone, so everyone knows your face, that'd be great. And we also have some other background moderators that will help in the breakout rooms. So I know you're all here to hear from these amazing panelists, so let's get into it. We have Chelsea, Nadira, Naziyah, Anna, and Christina, and I'm not going to spend too much time chatting about them. I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. So without further ado, our first panelist is Chelsea Cormack from GSK.
Thanks, Christina. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're all good.
Yeah, good. Do you mind just going on to the next slide? Yeah, so I've not been graduated too long. I've only been working for just over a year now. So I thought what I would do is just give an overview of the main things that I've done throughout my time at university, and then going on to the work that I've done since I've graduated, just highlighting a few of the things that I think helped me get to where I am, or kind of taught me a lesson, or things that I've kind of gained the most from. So back in 2014, I started my journey. So first year doing chemical engineering at the University of Edinburgh, and it was just in my second year, just before there was the Chemical Engineering Society AGM, and I thought, don't know whether to go or not really sure. But one of my friends said, just go and see what it's about, and if you never know what'll happen, you might get in, or just go and see. And I just kind of felt that I should go. Went to the AGM and became the Frank Morton rep. For those who aren't aware, Frank Morton is a chemical engineering sports day with all of the universities across the UK. So I got into the Chemical Engineering Society my second year, and organised the trip for Edinburgh University to attend this event. So after my second year, then I got a job with a company called Simpson Oils. It's a really small oil company where I live up in Scotland. And I just got this job to keep me busy, get some money in the summer. Didn't do anything chemical engineering related, did admin and literally scanning certificates, making a training matrix, just nothing kind of spectacular, but I highlighted this as something that I went and found for myself, that I think ultimately helped get me my subsequent placements, and get me to where I am. Also, in the summer before my third year, I went on a trip to India with the university, a widening horizon trip for students from schools to help them get into higher education. I've highlighted this because I found out about the event through a deleted email. So I kind of thought it was spam, deleted it, and it was looking after. So, oh, what's this? And find out about it. Applied. Initially got rejected, but it was a missed phone call then about 3 months later that I saw this kind of missed number on my phone, and called it back, and it was the organizer saying, oh, actually someone's dropped out, you can come. So I got to go on that trip. So that was kind of learning, like, if you don't look for opportunities, they won't come to you. So I did my third year. I was the treasurer of the Chemical Engineering Society. And then after my third year, I applied for a placement with GSK. Never ever thought I would get it, just did it as one of those, I'll just try and see what happens. And I couldn't believe it. I actually got it, to the extent that for that summer, I'd actually agreed to do a different placement with the university because I just didn't think I would get it, and then had to go and sort it out all after that. So here I worked in Worthing on the south coast, working on the commissioning project of a new bulk sterile facility, so making augmentin, if anybody's heard of that, antibiotics. It's a great experience. The fourth year, I helped to organise the Denby dinners. This is a networking dinner for chemical engineers. And it was at this dinner that I met somebody else from GSK, completely unrelated, who worked at the Montrose site. It was after quite a few applications that I had for the 6-month placement for your masters, that I thought, oh, I'm just getting rejected, not getting anywhere, kind of feeling quite down about it. I just emailed this man that I'd met, the representative, and said, hi, I'm looking for a placement. Are there any opportunities in Montrose? And then actually replied saying, sounds like a great idea, come to the site for an interview. And then I ended up getting that placement. So kind of shows the value of networking. And through this, something that I really enjoy, and something that I'm grateful to have the opportunity of, is Over the Wall. So this is a charity for children with life-limiting health conditions. So through my industrial placement, I got involved with this charity, and I've been the campmate every year since, for these week-long recreational camps, which I think has given me a lot of confidence and helped me as well. I then finished my 5th year, and 2019 graduated with a 2-1. Highlighted my 2-1, not first, because I think, and I definitely felt a lot of pressure that I have to get a first to be successful. Not at all. I got into the GSK Future Leaders Programme. So this is a 3-year graduate scheme in GSK, quite competitive. They only take on about 1 or 2 engineers in each discipline every year. And I spent my first rotation at GSK Ware as a process engineer, working on supporting oral solid dose products. So here I've done a number of kind of change management projects, risk assessments, so becoming a qualified risk assessment facilitator, supported production through deviations and root cause analysis, and a cost of waste project, so looking for different areas of waste on the site and implementing projects to reduce that. I think that's all for me for now, so I'll pass on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Thank you for sharing your story and telling us all about that. Moving on, we're going to switch screens to Dr. Nadira Jamil, and she's a communications test design, an engineer at communications test designing. Sorry about that, my words there. I'm going to actually pass control over to her.
Can I just share my screen?
Yeah, I'm just going to pause my share. or stop my share, and then we can switch over to you. So go for it.
Thank you. Oh. Right. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, first of all, thank you, Christina. And many thanks also to the organizers, the Molly Fergusson Initiative and Edinburgh University Women in STEM for inviting me, and congratulations for the effort they've taken in making this online event a success. So yeah, well done, ladies. It has been a very challenging year and it is tough now to look for jobs. However, if you are open to opportunities, you will certainly find one. And it might not be your first choice, but remember that the path to success is always a squiggly line. So yeah, here a little bit of my educational background. I attained my undergraduate and master degrees in electronics back home in my homeland, Malaysia, in 2008 and 2012 respectively. And then I worked in semiconductor companies, and I did my master's part-time while I was working with these companies. So back then, I was involved with international business units giving supportive technical services to customers all over the world, such as Japan, the United States, Austria, and Germany, in resolving their production and process problems. So working in multinational companies has allowed me to learn about their work cultures and also exposed me to a broader world. However, on the other hand, studying master's part-time while having a full-time job was certainly not a smooth sail. It took me twice the time of a full-time student, but I certainly had no regrets. So I have always wanted to bridge the gap between industry and academia, and this has prompted me to make a rather life-changing decision and pursue my PhD at the University of Edinburgh. My research involved designing of flexible microelectrode arrays used in monitoring the growth of breast cancer cells. So this technology has great applications in biomedical field as well in therapeutic drug monitoring and also bioprocess technology such as monitoring of microbial fermentation or degradation. So I started sending out job applications during the final year of my PhD. It is certainly always best to start early. I have applied at least 30 jobs and received 7 calls for interview, namely from industry, startup companies, and I also applied to postdoctoral researcher position at the universities. So the success rate here was about 20%, which was not bad. And as always, I was the only female candidate in the interviews. So I am currently engaged with CTDI in Glenrothes, working as an applications development engineer. It was a rather tough decision to return to industry, but I believe that scientific research is not just about working in labs. Well, it is more of sharing the knowledge in a broader real-life situation, in particular the sustainable industrial development and also the 4th industrial revolution. So with great hope that my decision will enable me to enhance further my interest to integrate the skills that I have to a broader range of prospects. So in particular, test equipment and also communications platform. So why engineering? Engineering is very exciting, as you might already know. You just name any object around you. Everything has its origin in engineering. If it is not in the design, it could be in the production, the machinery, the factory, the computerization and communication, the vehicles and the infrastructure. All of these need engineering inputs. So engineering professional is not the stereotype people in safety gear. You have to change that stigma. Now engineers dress well with professional design outfits, and remember that one can always still stay modest while being involved in engineering. So in my work, I have to deal with all kinds of people of all levels. And when dealing with them, be humble and do not be afraid if you need help. So just reach out to them. And most importantly, always do your best because success knows no bounds. It has always been my dream to make the world a better place through engineering. And my main inspiration is my father, who is also an engineer. And he inspired me to study engineering and also always reminds me to never stop learning. So one more little advice from myself, it is not what field of studies you qualify, it is actually the work. Well, any work that is favorable to you. And remember, focus on what do you want to do with your career and never let the noise put you down. So I wish each and every one of you the best in your studies and in finding the career of your dream. Well, that's from me. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you so much, Nadira. That was great. I'm just going to share my screen once again.
Sure.
I think I'll stop you and back to my slides here. So perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now for our next introduction, we have Naziyah Mahmood from Scottish Engineering. So take it away.
Hello, everybody. Well, I don't have any slides today, so it's not as fancy as everybody else's, but I am very strategically trying to hide a mess behind me caused by construction happening in the house. So right now I'm in outer space. So firstly, thank you to Edinburgh University and the Women in STEM Society as well, and Molly Fergusson Initiative for having me along. So cutting a long story short, I'm a bit of a Jill of all trades. So I'm an astrophysicist and aerospace engineer, specializing in trajectory and orbital analysis for satellite systems. But I'm also currently a gender equality expert for Scottish Engineering, absolutely fantastic organization who work to support all different companies across Scotland, whether it's in terms of engineering, manufacturing and construction. So we deliver training of all different kinds. But I'm also a web development and maintenance manager, a women's rights activist, and I work very closely with the YWCA Scotland and the First Minister's National Advisory Council for Women and Girls in order to help change legislations and laws for women's rights. So whether that's to do with sexual harassment against women, girls in schools, or it could be about women from BEME backgrounds, we're just trying to push for that positive change. I'm also a senior martial artist in my art for Scotland, and I bring this up for a reason, even though it's not STEM related, which I'll mention in a moment. And you know, I'm a poet, a writer, and it kind of goes on. And recently, I've also become a round to applicant for becoming a citizen astronaut. So fingers crossed. So the reason I bring all of that up is because it sounds like a heck of a lot, doesn't it? Like it sounds like, okay, you're a bit all over the place, you know, and one of the questions I often get from people is, how do you prioritize that? And how does it, you know, why are you doing all these different things? But it's because for me, they all link into one another somehow. So my journey, not to bore everybody, so I'll make it quick. My journey started with me actually before uni when I was in high school. So I'm partially blind. And as you can see, I have many other factors about me which people might consider a minority group for engineering. So I'm a woman of faith, a woman of colour, you know, and it goes on. And it was just a case of me originally wanting to go into medicine, but a couple of things happened, and it was all down to one teacher who inspired me to really enjoy physics, and I loved physics, which was kind of odd, you know, at that time, especially for a girl to be the one doing that. So I ended up having to decide between medicine and physics. Ended up going with physics and astronomy, never looked back because it helped me learn more about the stars and more. So I went into uni, the University of Glasgow, and I did my honours degree in physics with astrophysics, went on to do my postgrad in aerospace engineering, so in space mission analysis and design. And that's where it all kind of started for me. So just like Nadira was saying earlier, you know, it's very important for many of us to really have that link with academia and industry. I see once you're an academic, it doesn't ever leave you, it stays with you. So when I made that transition into industry, I found myself still being attracted towards research type roles. So I became an Earth observation engineer, and I was working with a company on European Space Agency missions. So in Europe, as many of you may know, as opposed to NASA, we have the European Space Agency. Support your local agency, people. So we also have the UK one now too, though. But yeah, it really gave me an insight into what it was like to be working within industry, but still having that research part of it there with me, which stayed with me. And I also worked on quite a few other missions. So I worked on the propulsion subsystems, and my main subsystem for the to space missions was mission analysis, which is kind of like the heart of the mission. It brings all the other subsystems together, whether it's thermal, power, comms, you know, all of the others. And it helps design how to get the spacecraft from A to B, so literally from ground up into orbit, wherever it needs to be. And of course, through that journey, I'm not here to talk just about successes, as the others echoed as well. Through that journey, I found myself facing a lot of obstacles, a heck of a lot of obstacles. So whether it was down to discrimination, down to my gender, my color, my ethnicity, microaggressions taking place every day. And those small aspects really helped me realize that there's a lot more work to be done in the field. So this is where I ended up going into the equalities field as well. So I try to keep that work going side by side. And I know that's like, I don't want to go over the time here, Christina, so I know I'm hitting my 5-minute mark there, but from there, I realized that there's a lot of advancement being made in progression, but there's still a heck of a lot of it to go. And just as some of the others echoed, I truly believe that one of the reasons you go into a STEM subject in the first place is because the whole point of a STEM subject is to work towards a better tomorrow for everybody. So whether you're working on a cure for an illness, whether you're designing an algorithm that's going to help people with disabilities, it could affect one person or a million. It's all about working towards a better future for all. So that's what attracted me to it. And I guess this is where I brought in the equality side so that we can help get more women into the sector as well. But yeah, I'll kind of stop there and pass it on, and happy to answer more questions later. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Naziyah. Yeah, we'll be touching on a few of the things you mentioned there. So thank you for introducing kind of your areas of expertise, your many areas of expertise. And so moving along to our next introduction, we have Anna Naughton from David Narro Associates. So take it away, Anna.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks also for having me here. So I'm, sorry, I've not prepared any slides, but I'm actually on maternity leave right now, so a little person is taking up a lot of my time, so that's my excuse. But yeah, so I'm a senior structural engineer and a team leader at David Narro Associates. I graduated in civil environmental engineering in 2012. So during my degree, I thought I was going to kind of go more into environmental engineering, but then I discovered that actually I was more interested in structural side of things, and that's kind of the direction I took later on. Generally, throughout my degree, I worked really hard, not just uni work, but I'm sort of mean actual jobs. You might tell from my accent, I'm originally from Poland. So I couldn't get a student loan. So I basically just had to have a job to make a living. And it kind of started all with just working in a cafe and stuff like that. And then I moved on to working in an office, like in first, second year of uni, I was testing software. In a company called Crocodile Clips. And then after that, after third year, I was applying for a lot of placements. So I was taking part in, different kind of talks and things like that Career Service was organizing. And they were all saying about how important it is to get a placement and to get experience and so on. So I was really determined to get a placement, summer placement. And then I ended up with not getting anything. So I was looking for other things to do, and I applied for an EPSRC bursary and ended up doing a research project at the university. I can tell you more about it later if anyone is interested, but basically it involved finding someone at the university who would basically give you a project and take you on and take care of you over the summer. And I was very lucky that Professor Luke Bisbee did that for me. And then, yeah, I after fourth year, I was still trying to get a placement, and I eventually managed to get one. It was, I think, mostly really because I was applying for jobs in the third year, and then the company that I got the job with, the placement with, was David Narro Associates, because they remembered that I was applying earlier on and they thought I was very persistent. So yeah, that kind of then stretched into me working part-time there in my final year at university. And all that eventually, I think, helped to then get a graduate position at Arab. And I kind of felt like I couldn't turn it down, because that was a company that I dreamed of working for since first year of university. But it also meant that I moved to England, and actually it turned out that working there was really quite brief, because I just felt really, really lonely, because my partner at the time lived in Edinburgh, and all my friends were in Edinburgh, and I just kind of somehow couldn't make home where I was. So I decided to come back to Edinburgh, and also I actually wanted to work for a smaller company, because it kind of made me feel like I mattered more. Kind of, you know, whether I showed up in the office or not, it just kind of felt like I was making a really big difference. So I went back to working at Narro Associates. That was all in 2013, and then since then, basically, I've just been working there and gaining experience, and I was really extremely lucky to be mentored by David Narro. And if there's any tip that I can give you, just gonna from all that, it's just to be keen, because no one really can teach you how to be excited about what you're doing, but everything else you can learn. And if you care and, you know, put that little bit of extra in, then people will notice that, and they will want to help you, and they will want to teach you how to do things. So I guess that's it for now. Yeah, happy to answer any questions later on, and thank you.
Great, thank you for your introduction, Anna. And yes, that's very important. Be keen and be engaged with what you're interested in. And thank you for being along, even when you're on maternity leave. And now moving along to our final panelist, we have Christina Nagut from Mott MacDonald.
Thank you, Christina. That's going to be a tough act to follow coming in at the end, but I'll do my best. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I'm very excited to be able to be in this panel. So, hello everyone, my name is Christina. I am a mechanical engineer working at Mott MacDonald. And I'm going to, similar to my colleagues on the panel, I'm just going to try and give you a brief overview of my career from graduating, how I got there, and what I do to hopefully inspire some of you to join me. So I work in the water industry as a mechanical engineer. What a water industry is basically has to do with providing engineering solutions to treat water to make it into drinking water for customers, or to treat wastewater, so that's everything that goes down the drain, to be able to safely dispose it. So there in the picture on the slide, on the left-hand side, you can see me graduating from university, very keen to get started. And on the right is a picture of me on site. So there actually behind me is a reservoir where you take raw water and you pump it up to a treatment works where you process it so that it becomes drinkable, and then you can distribute it to people's houses. So that's what comes at your tap. So next slide, please. If you don't mind, Christina, thank you. So I started my undergraduate degree at University in Edinburgh in 2010. I'm originally from Romania, so it was the first time I came to UK, and it was a bit of a culture shock, but I managed to somehow get into it in the first year. My degree was a 5-year degree, and it included a placement, an 8-month placement in my 4th year. So some of the courses that I've put here on the slide were the ones that I found that helped me in my career. There's many courses you'll get to do in your studies. Mechanical engineering is quite broad, but for me, fluid mechanics was something that taught me the theoretical knowledge that I needed. Design principles was courses that taught me how to work as a team, which is very important when you work in an engineering company, because you work with engineers from other disciplines as well. And another one that is becoming more and more useful as time goes by is professional issues for mechanical engineers. That's where I learned a lot about the management side of projects and what can go wrong in a project. So that's very useful to know. I put my thesis up there as well. My degree had a renewable energy side to it, which was a bit of a passion of mine. So I did my thesis on doing a small tidal device that I built a prototype of and run some tests. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned from it is when everything goes wrong, keep calm and carry on, because I had to redo all of my experiments, I think, in a weekend when I realized I had set up the kit wrong. So I think that was a good lesson, that don't panic, just start all over again, and if you work hard, you'll get through it. And I did. Next slide, please. So throughout my studies, I also I was also interested to get some work experience over the summers to help build my CV, but also get some money in the pocket. So the first one I had was a summer internship at a local research and development company outside of Edinburgh. I got that one similar to Chelsea by networking with someone at the university. We had people from the industry that came to some of our university classes to give talks. So I got in touch with them, and it so happened that one of the local companies was hiring interns that summer. I went for an interview and I got the place there, which was great. And that definitely helped me in securing my next job, which was the industrial placement that lasted 8 months. And I was a design intern also up in Glenrothes, like Nadira, for a company there that was doing hydraulic motors. And that was a really good experience to work with other engineers and see what a factory is like, which is quite interesting. Other things I also tried to do during university was get involved in society, something I strongly recommend. It's good for you to it learns you it teaches you how to manage your time when you do all these extracurricular activities, but it's also great to find something that you're passionate about, because you also get to meet other people that are like-minded. And funnily enough, I now work with probably 4 or 5 people that at one point were in a University Engineers Without Borders society. So we all kind of end up in the same place, which is great because it makes working together more fun. I also tried and did some tutoring. So when I was in my final year in university, I did some tutoring for some of the first year and second year courses. And again, that was a great opportunity for me to learn how to be better at explaining things to people, and something that I'm still working on and hopefully getting better at it. So a bit about what I do now. When I graduated from university, I also applied to many jobs because I was keen to get on a graduate scheme. And finally, I got into Mott MacDonald. This was the 3rd time I had applied to them, so it does pay off to be persistent. Mott MacDonald, for those of you that don't know, is a global engineering company, does engineering management and consultancy. There's about 16,000 employees in over 160 locations. And they do a graduate scheme for engineers, but also other STEM subjects. I joined that scheme in September 2015, and after working for 5 years for Mott MacDonald, I'm now a chartered engineer. So that means I'm part of the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. The type of work I do varies a lot. So it can be things like designing pumping systems that involves lots of calculations and drawings and coordinating with multidisciplinary teams. It can be desktop studies where you do computer modeling to assess behaviors of fluids in pipelines, for example. Working on site, you do site surveys where you have to go to site to look at equipment, but also so you can get ideas by talking to people there of what works, what doesn't, and how you can improve on what's there. And very importantly, coordinate and manage small multidisciplinary teams. This is something you'll do even when you start without realizing it. When you work in teams with other engineers, it's always about coordination and working well together. So I thought you might be curious, what is a day at work like for me? Well, if you like to have different things every day, then this is definitely an area of interest for you, because no 2 projects are the same. So I just put a couple of pictures from some projects I'm working on to try and give you a flavor of things. This one is the Boston Barrier Flood Defense Scheme in Lincolnshire, UK. So this is a scheme for the Environment Agency, a £100 million scheme to protect the city of Boston in England against flooding, tidal flooding. The city has a history of flooding. Most recently was in 2013 when over 800 properties were damaged by flooding. So the Environment Agency has asked Mount Macdonald together with BAMNUTTL to implement this flood defense scheme. And what it consists of, basically on the right hand side, that's a rising sector gate that sits in the bed of the river. And when it goes up in that closed position that you see there, together with flood defense walls going along the river, they create a barrier. So any tidal surge that's coming towards the town is basically stopped by this gate. This project is going to be commissioned this year, and it's taken hundreds of people working on it to get it to the point where it is, starting from planning application, environmental impact assessments. Then we've got the civil engineers, structural engineers, electrical, mechanical, architects, planners, and so many more. So it really shows the broad range of STEM activities that you can do in construction. Next slide, please. This one is actually where I was this morning. So this is the Mogden Sewage Treatment Works in London. It is huge, to say the least. I tried to show you there on a map. I drew a contour around it. So if you were to walk all around it, it was 3 kilometers. This treatment works serves 2 million people in London. And at the moment, it's undergoing works to expand so it can serve 2.4 million people over the next 5 years. The sort of works you do here, again, it's multidisciplinary teams. You've got chemical engineers that look at the processes that you need to undertake in order to be able to treat the wastewater and then safely dispose of it. And there's lots of mechanical systems like pumps, screens involved, where mechanical engineers come into effect. But it's what really puts it into perspective is that at the end of the day, what you do is going to have a real impact on the people living around that work. So it makes it more challenging and rewarding at the same time. And on the right hand side, it's not all just big projects or site all the time. This was when I was very lucky to be in Edinburgh actually last year to present at the International Water Association Young Professional Conference, where I did a study on innovation projects in the UK, and I was able to share it with my peers. So that was a great day, actually. And yeah, that's all about me, and be happy to talk more about it in our breakout rooms. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry, I kind of flipped around the slides there a little bit by accident.
No, okay.
Thank you very much, all panelists, for your introductions. It's awesome to see so many different disciplines of engineering kind of brought together under this event. So thank you. We're going to launch right into our panel discussion. We might extend the panel discussion for a few extra minutes so that might shorten the questions section, but you can ask any questions in breakout rooms. So kind of starting it off, you guys have all spoken about all your amazing stories, and I know that, yeah, so congratulations on where you are today. I know a lot of our attendees would like to hear just a little bit about some of the setbacks you've had to overcome, any difficulties you've had, and why don't we start off with Chelsea?
Yeah, sounds good. So there's kind of two parts to this that I'd like to answer. So the one, so setbacks, and I think all of the panelists have spoken about this, is kind of applying to placements or to jobs and getting rejected, and it's a tough process. I think everybody goes through it. And I have, thinking about my 6-month placement, I applied to countless number of companies, and there's nothing worse. So when you do that, the online assessment, and then pops up, oh sorry, you've been rejected, and it's an awful feeling. I think with that, I just like to say, kind of try and learn from the opportunity, and think about the roles that you really want. I think where I got successful was I really cared about the company that I was applying for, and took the time, and I think that really helped with my application. But the big setback that I'd like to speak about was actually in January this year. So I've been working at the company for a little while, and I always thought, oh, engineering was so hard, like go into industry, it'll be fine, like you've gone through it, it's been awful and you can handle anything. But this was a situation where I had quite a laid back manager who let lots of different people give work to the new grads. You're a new grad, you want to learn as much as possible. So someone's, oh, do you want to do this? Yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. And you take on so much. And I care about what I'm doing, so a big perfectionist, but it kind of it added up and added up, and then in January it was kind of a bit of a breaking point where I just had too much. So you're trying to do all these different projects at once, and you're just overwhelmed and trying to learn everything at the same time because it's all new. Where I kind of had a bit, a bit of a meltdown. But so that was I guess a big knock to my confidence that I'm trying my best and trying to learn as much as possible, but there is such thing as too much. So I guess my learning from this is to speak up and be honest and be assertive. So if I speak to my manager, oh, I've got a bit much work, oh no, you're fine, like keep going. But saying, no, actually, this isn't okay, you need to help me out, this is too much. And then also having that support network around. So very grateful to that my friends and employees to have that and speak to people and think, oh, does this sound okay, kind of thing. I guess that's my step back.
Thank you for sharing that, Chelsea. I'd now like to pass it on to Nadira and ask the same question.
Oh, okay. I am very grateful that I did not encounter any major setbacks, but I certainly had gone through a few minor ones, which I can share with you. Firstly, I applied for a job right after graduating from my bachelor's degree, and I remember not being very choosy back then. So in fact, my first real job as a software engineer was with an insurance company back home. And the lesson I learned here is that we probably should not be too selective when we're looking for a job, or maybe for especially the first one. And then when I have started working, office politics is, I would say, unavoidable. It is not actually uncommon when you already started working in the offices. So what matters most is how you play your part. And if you want to be safe, normally you have to make friends with those you feel have the upper hands. And then sometimes you even probably have to fit in together with them. For example, if the influential person is into golf, you might also have to adapt to it. But if you feel uneasy with the office politics, you also have the option to either, like Chelsea says, speak out, voice out what's your what you're not comfortable with, or maybe leave and look for another job, or also perhaps you can get better academic or professional qualifications that might bring you to a better place. And the other setback is being away from home, which I'm pretty sure many of you here are also away from your family. So however, this should not be a major problem that affects your performance either in your studies or when in your workplace. And I myself am away from home I'm away from home 10,000 miles at least. So you have to be strong here and firm in your decision. And you have also to adapt to the local environment. And finally, probably one of the biggest setbacks that I've had during my PhD research was that I have encountered many failures. And the worst one was during my final year, where my gold microelectrodes actually went missing, and I actually needed that for my final experimental work. And the cost of the missing item was over the grant. So how would you feel when the item that you really need and also which the life of your research went missing? So how did I overcome the problem? The important thing is that we must have to instill sincerity in ourselves, be your good self, and make friends with all, in particular, those related to your research and also especially the school. I was very fortunate because the school was very helpful and they have decided to procure another set for me. So I was very worried, to be honest, that I may not make it, may not able to make it on time, but that I had faith, and I keep on telling myself that I had already worked hard, and then giving up is never an option.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, Nadira. Going along to our next panelist, Naziyah, I'd like to ask you the same question.
Setbacks, where do I start? So it's a really multifaceted issue in a sense, because it's not just coming from the angle of you as an individual, as a potential employee, there's setbacks kind of throughout the entire system, if you want to think about the entire pipeline. So I'm going to try and I'll hit it in like 3 quick points. So really echoing what Chelsea said about learn to say no. You have to, this was one of the issues that I always really had as well, where they'd give you more and more and more, and because you're so keen and you want to be part of the team, and it's great to do that. It's, it's really good to be able to try different things. And one of the reasons I mentioned all the different things I did before was because transferable skills. So often what we find is a lot of people seem to assume, oh, if I've done this subject, that's the only thing I can do. And yet, in one of the operations teams I worked in on one of this, it was actually an ICE mission, an Earth observation mission for the European Space Agency. One of the people in operations actually came from a law background, but the reason he was able to then be in part of the team is because he demonstrated that he had incredible problem-solving skills. So often, what feels like a very specialized field, and it can be, can still lead you in other ways as well, depending on what you want to do. But yes, as the time goes on, you want to be part of the team, you want to do great. And as Nadira was saying as well, it's great to integrate yourself into teams, but also learn your limits in terms of how much you can take on. So that's really important. I'm still learning that, to be honest, even if you can get to the level of being a manager and you still don't learn that properly. But yeah, that part. The other issue is, especially when it comes to women, we have this instinctive need almost to sometimes deselect ourselves. I know that sounds really strange, but in so much research that's been done, it's been seen that if a job description has 10 specification criteria, men are likely to still apply even if they only meet 6 of them, right? But women will most likely only apply if they hit all 10 points. But this is also a problem with the recruitment section then. So that's on the side of the employer, which I won't get into too much detail about, but realize that you need to start putting value on your own achievements. I know that sounds really corny, but I can be quite a cob. But at the end of the day, we are often our own worst enemy. And sometimes you have to realize that the work you have done is real, because this whole idea of an imposter syndrome is really a thing, even amongst those who get to senior levels as well. It still exists, and more so within the female participation. So really put value on your achievements when nobody else is doing that, because realize that you have put in the hard work and you are just as worthy of being there as anybody else, which is a really, really important point. And in terms of systematic barriers I've met, there have been plenty. I've literally lost that dream job opportunity down to something I couldn't control, which was how other people viewed me. So keeping that long story short, there was a job opportunity going along quite a while ago, and this was something I really wanted, So I went along, did my interview, wore my best interview clothes and really presented and did all my research, where I think I only had about 5 days to do this, whereas most of the other candidates had 2 weeks. So went along, did this, and normally employers don't do this, but I was pretty much given the thumbs up by them, saying that, you know what, we're really looking forward to welcoming you in. So I left there absolutely top of the world, on cloud 9. And when I got outside, I decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to let a colleague of mine know how I'm doing. So I took a selfie. And in the background, you can see the kind of, this was basically in an area that's known as the science and engineering hub of the UK. So you can see all these buildings behind me, but there's no rule about being able to take a selfie there. And because I was like hundreds of meters away, and that's fine, because there was bus stops, people walking by, with their phones out. So I did that, went home, and later a couple of days later, there was a knock on the door. And turns out it was 2 detectives, and they were saying to me, oh, is your father home? And I was like, he's not home at the moment, but then they came back later when my dad was in, and they said to my dad, sir, did anyone else have your car? Because it was actually my dad who took me to that interview. They were going past, so they said, we may as well drop you off rather than you getting a train. So we were like, nobody's had it, and then I remembered, I said, nobody's had our car, but we did go somewhere in it. And when I mentioned that I was in that area, they did say to me, these 2 detectives, why were you there? And I said, I had an interview. these two detectives literally hung their heads and shook their heads and said, you know what, we know what the problem is, never mind, you've got nothing to worry about. And I did say, you can't just say that, what's the issue? It turns out that as I was standing outside the car taking a selfie, somebody had called the police to tell them that there's a suspicious looking person standing outside these buildings that they thought didn't look right standing there, and basically reported me. But then obviously later, to see that my alibi was real, you know, the police would have to then call the company, but then who wants to hire somebody who has the police calling about them? So where I was practically guaranteed this job opportunity, it slipped through my fingers, all down to one person not realizing that I have just as much worth to be there as anybody else, all based on a piece of fabric on my head. So what was so suspicious about me? Was it my suit that I wore? Was it my new bag that I wore? Or was it just one thing that makes people think that we are so different when we are literally the same? So that's just one example of many. And the way I overcame that really low point, because it really puts you off, was to realize just what I said earlier. I have every much of a right to be where I am as anyone else. And you do have to fight for it. And it's a shame, because I'm not trying to put anybody off, because it is an incredible field to be in. But sometimes when we come up against these barriers, you have to be really able to give yourself a pat on the back. And it can be really difficult to do that when we humble ourselves so much, but realize that you're just as worthy as anyone else. So I'll talk on for ages, so I'll pass it on.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Naziyah. I'm going to pass it along to Anna next.
Right. I suppose my kind of experiences are quite similar to the panelists that have spoken already, but I think maybe one of the memories I that's quite vivid in my memory still is being like first and second year of university and doing, I think, course like engineering 1 and structural mechanics, and then basically just crying in the toilet and just because I didn't understand what was going on in the tutorial. And I was just really upset and thinking to myself, what am I doing here? You know, I'm abroad, sort of, you know, doing a degree. Then why sort of just questioning everything, and just thinking a lot that I'm a failure and how am I actually going to get through all this. But basically, what I did was just kept reminding myself that I can only just do my best. And if that's not enough, then that's not enough. But if I do my best, then that's all I can do. And I couldn't do anything more than that. So I sort of just kept telling myself that throughout the whole degree, really. And then ended up getting it first, and you know, it kind of went all okay in the end. But it was a lot of kind of bringing myself down and then trying to overcome that again. So yeah, so that was one thing. And then kind of what Naziyah was saying about imposter syndrome, I think that's something that is just in my head a lot. And then imagine all that happening, and then, you know, like kind of what Chelsea was saying as well, with a lot of projects on, a lot of pressure on, and you know, inevitably you do make a mistake at work, you miss something, and you know, we all make mistakes, and that's just what it is. But it can be a real blow to your confidence. And in my case, actually, as I was saying before, I was really lucky to have great support at work, and kind of, you know, making a mistake is actually a great learning experience in a way, when it's not too serious. The mistake, I mean, in my case, it was I was doing site investigation. Basically, just kind of to briefly explain it, when we start working on a site, there's a brownfield site, so there's, for example, buildings there, or there was a development there before. You do an exercise that's called a site investigation. So you do boreholes or trial pits for structural engineers to find out as much as you can about the existing building and the foundations and the ground conditions, that sort of thing. And basically, I didn't put enough of the sampling points. So then later on, when we were on site, it turned out that there was a kind of sub-basement that was completely missed, and then we had to quickly come up with something to sort it out for the project. But so what I learned from that, actually, it was really difficult to kind of face everyone in the team, thinking that, you know, I'm completely worthless and now it's going to cost extra money and all that. But so that was something, I suppose, that I was thinking about a lot then, and thinking that, right, okay, I've made a mistake. Other people make mistakes as well. Now all I have to do is just admit to it and then kind of come up with ways to fix it. So kind of it's really good if you can come up with ways of fixing it before you tell everyone that you made the mistake. So then you can just say, right, okay, so this happened, but what we can do about it is this and this. So that was kind of one of the strategies that I had. But then another thing that also I learned the value of, and kind of was doing maybe not knowingly before, was building relationships with people. So if, you know, there's a team of people working there, so there's an architect, there's other mechanical and electrical engineers, and quantity surveyor, and you know, everyone in the team kind of had to know that this happened and then how we were going to fix it. And the thing is that, you know, I managed to build really good relationship with all those people in the team and the client as well. So that means that people are kind of, when they like you, they're more likely to try to help you and to kind of get through it together. So I think the relationship that was particularly strong and kind of was maybe tested a little bit there was the relationship with the architect, because she was also kind of fulfilling the role of a project manager a little bit, and sort of making sure that everything was going smoothly. And so that, I suppose, the lesson from this was admitting to it, fixing it, but also making sure that those relationships that you have with people, that are kind of, you're working on them, and they're important, basically. I guess that's it for me for now, but happy to chat about it more later.
Thank you for sharing, Anna. Finally, I'd like to ask Christina the same question.
Thank you. It's just want to echo what Naziyah and Anna have already said. The imposter syndrome is very real when you, especially when you join as a graduate and you tend to be in a company where there's a lot of senior people who've been doing this for years and years. You can have a bit of a thing like, what am I doing here? Am I in the right place? And it doesn't go away with time. It has happened to me before. Maybe I had a bad day or someone has made a certain comment and then my confidence goes down, or I start questioning myself. And like Anna said as well, the support group is very important. And also you don't have to know everything. You're not expected to know everything. If you're working in engineering or STEM industry, means you're a problem solver. So that's just another problem that you need to try and solve. And just have to keep that in mind to help you get through it.
Great, thank you, panelists, for answering that question there. I know there are so many different answers, and I think you guys all have given such different insight, and I thank you all for sharing some of the stories that I know must have been quite difficult for all of you to go through. I had a few more questions kind of to ask, but I actually want to open it up to the floor and see if anyone had any direct questions they wanted to ask. So Anushka, if there are any questions, feel free to.
Yeah. Hi guys, you guys can just put your questions either in the chat or you can raise your hands if you want to put your video on and ask them. I can relay them back to the panelists if you're wanting to put them in the chat. If anyone has any questions.
If not, I have a few questions.
Yeah, you can go ahead with a few then.
So I'm just wondering, we're all, I think a lot of us here are women in engineering, and we all hear about this kind of gender gap in engineering and kind of the need to retain more women in the sector. And I was kind of hoping for Naziyah to answer this initially, but then if anyone else wants to join in, then go for it.
Yeah, so in terms of female participation in the engineering sector, it's a shame, but the UK does actually have one of the lowest participations all across Europe. So up until recently, it was actually less than 10%, and only recently we've just hit over 12%. So it's about 12.37%. So it's taken several years to see that small incremental change. And although it's still positive in its progress, we're needing to see this change a lot faster, especially because of the current climate that's taking place. So, and a lot of the UN research being conducted right now, what people are seeing is that COVID-19 is having an especially negative impact on people from different protected characteristics, and that includes women. And going forward, whether it's the engineering sector, whether it's any sector, we unfortunately will see the repercussions of that. However, it's also been seen that women are the backbone to recovery from any kind of economical crisis. And that's where all of you come in terms of being students at that point of almost graduating or just graduated. We're going to need as many people as we can getting into the engineering sector. So prior to the whole COVID situation, Scotland alone, forget the rest of the UK, needed over 140,000 more engineers in order to meet the skill shortages that are taking place already. Now, because of COVID, that's going to be a heck of a lot worse. So going forward, there's going to be a huge need for more engineers. So the employers and industry cannot exclude women from that. And in terms of how they face that as well, there's a lot of talks already happening within industry. So when I have I give a lot of training sessions to the leadership of engineering companies across Scotland on how to become more diverse and more inclusive as well. So now they'll be looking more at their everything from their job advertisements, the wording. Sometimes you'll notice that there's some companies that use wording like Amazon, for example, has been known to use words like wickedly and maniacally in their job ads. Now, I don't know why anybody would want to use the word maniacally unless you're applying to be part of the wacky races or something. But basically, these kind of words often put off women from applying. And so they're beginning to kind of look into gender coded wording, as we call it as well, looking into their interview processes, putting into place best practice. So in terms of positive action measures. So what that means is maybe having things like women's networking events or having engagement events where you get universities or schools or colleges to get female students to meet employers, because a lot of the time, believe it or not, employers are just as lost as the students. So one of my roles previously as a STEM development manager was to help bridge that gap, basically. And you see that everybody's just as lost as each other. So there are companies out there who are really going to be looking for a more diverse workforce, and this is why we also need more women going into the sector. And just to kind of say in terms of diversity as well, yes, women do make up a lot less in terms of the participation, but we will see that rising and we need more women. For example, and this means across all sectors, so this could be to do with the medical sector where they require more female input or understanding in terms of certain aspects, and that can go for anything actually, to be honest, because you need people with different mindsets and different ways of thinking. So there will hopefully going forward be more of a surge in terms of positive action being taken for getting women into STEM. But on that note, just like what the other said as well, it's really important, as much as everybody hates it, it's really important to network. So if you find that there's somebody that you've spoken to or you kind of look up to, don't feel afraid to reach out to them. Worst case scenario, they say no, or nobody gets in touch. It just means you move on to the next one or the next opportunity. So as my sister usually said to me, and this is something that stuck with me as well, if you don't ask, you don't get. And it really works, really. But yeah, I'll pass that along there.
Perfect. Thank you, Naziyah, for your insightful answer there. If any of the other panelists want to kind of chime in about what they think can be done to retain more women in engineering, feel free to speak now.
If I may add, oh, sorry.
No, go for it. It's fine.
Just quick one to say, I think in the recent couple of years, companies with a number of employees above a certain numbers have been reporting on their gender pay gap. I know the company I work for is one of them, and I think that's highlighted. It's now putting things out in the open, and like Naziyah said, companies are now more maybe than in the past trying to act on it and to rectify it. Some companies, including mine, are doing not only just the networking scheme and mentoring scheme for female employees, but they're also looking at something called a return scheme, where they're actively trying to encourage women who maybe took a break in their careers for personal reasons or family reasons to come back, and not only come back into the industry, but feel that they have the support to take on more to take on challenging roles that can further their career, whether it's leadership roles or it's a technical lead on a project. And I know a couple of my colleagues that are in that position, and I think that's really great, because it's not just about getting women in the engineering industry in the first place, but just making sure we don't lose them. And initiatives like that are happening more and more, and I think they're very important.
Great, thank you for sharing. I know, Anushka, were you gonna?
Yeah, so I've just got a question. One of the participants is asking, I think she's still in school, and she says she's the only girl doing physics in her sixth form. And she wanted to know, maybe Naziyah, you'd know the answer to this specifically, but she wanted to know what the ratio of women in engineering is in the UK or just in general.
So in terms of industry, so past your academic years, at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, the ratio for women in engineering across the UK is 12.3%, which is really low when we look at countries like Portugal, Bulgaria, Latvia, who have actually hit over 50% in terms of participation for women in science and engineering. But at the same time, Scotland is actually doing better than the rest of the UK. We're sitting at 19% in comparison to UK-wide. So although that's still a lot better, still a lot of work to be done. And I completely empathize with, when you're in your sixth year or your higher years in physics, often you're one of the only girls in the class, and you're either seen as a geek or a nerd, or you're seen as one of the boys. There's always some kind of a twist that they tend to put on it as well. But something, like I used to get called a nerd and a geek all the time, but now I take that as a compliment, because it just means I'm passionate about something, and I really am into my kind of comics and manga and stuff, like gaming and stuff. That's a whole different story. But basically, when you're at that point where you feel like, you know what, I'm one of the only people in my group like me, and just like a lot of the other panelists said as well, I know it's really difficult, because you want to bring yourself down, you want to quieten yourself and pull into yourself as well, but realize that you're actually a lot more powerful than that. And it's quite empowering to realize that you're in a position that can then not only influence change in those in other years below you, but then going forward towards where you go to as well. So from what I have seen as well in terms of academia, the numbers for those participating in physics has been practically static for a very long time. But in recent years, like in the last 2-3 years, it is slowly going up and up and up. So here's hoping we see more, women in the physics field. So welcome on board. Looking forward to seeing your name up there.
If I can just jump in quickly.
Go for it.
Maybe sort of just vaguely relevant, but before I went on maternity leave, I attended a meeting that was where all participants were female, and that was the first. I think it was very interesting. There were planners, the clients, the architects, and me were all women. It was quite nice. It was
Yeah, that's really great to hear. It's not something you see often, I know, at least from what I've seen in my internships. I'm aware that we're running a bit short on time for breakout rooms. Anushka, if there's like any quick question.
There's just one more, so let me maybe just get through that. But it's like, how have you dealt with negative experiences working or at university to do with being female? Like, how have you overcome them, I guess? Anyone can answer, I think, because no specific person.
Well, I can maybe jump in. I didn't really have any negative experiences at university, but I have had some on-site. So, for example, you know, you're a design engineer. You've designed a building. You go to site, and then there's a bunch of guys that are building it, and then sometimes it doesn't happen often, I must say. There's only, I think, 1 or 2 instances like that where you know there maybe are not used to women being engineers, so then they can be a little bit dismissive or sort of be like, oh darling, I've been doing it for longer than you've been alive, that kind of thing, you know. But I guess this maybe isn't the best tip really, and I guess I should be standing up for myself maybe a little bit more, but what I normally do is just I kind of ignore it and just go into the facts really, and I just say, well, that's fine, but I actually have designed it, so what I would like us to do is just, you know, this and this, and then what I kind of prefer to do really is just work as best as I can, and then in the hope that, you know, that's going to just transpire that I know what I am actually talking about, or I have, you know, thought about it, and that's why I made a decision to go one way and not the other. And then you know, that takes time, but it's sort of you know, a relationship building exercise again, where you just set an example, or I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself well enough, but basically if you work well and kind of justify, or not even justify the decisions, but just do your job well, then people actually notice that, and then they kind of stop questioning you. It's just maybe taking a little bit long, but you know, I prefer that instead of the kind of confrontation or trying to prove things. I think just the actions can prove them.
If I could just quickly add as well, so I completely understand where that comes from, Anna, as well, in terms of you know, that kind of self-confidence basically is a huge part of it as well. But that's something that comes, it doesn't, nobody's born you know, very confident in themselves. It's something you learn as you go along. And I guess from that martial background of mine, I've always had this kind of battle type mindset in a way, but at the same time I realize as well a lot of it is just that internal belief in yourself, regardless of what those around you are saying. But the other thing I just wanted to quickly say was support circles really are important. So for me, when I ended up taking part in things like the YWCA Scotland, so it's just like volunteering, it starts off as volunteering as part of a panel, or even what you're doing right now, the fact that you are taking the time out to attend a session where women are able to, and allies, so like and either self-identifying women or anyone who allies with them, are able to really support one another and give each other that kind of pat on the back and that advice, it really encourages you to go forward. So whether it's a university society you join, or whether you team up, like for example with the Women's in STEM Society for the Edinburgh University, or whether it's like, for example, I was the president of my manga and anime society of my for my university, so goodness, those were times. But basically, even though it didn't have anything to do with like women's empowerment, I found myself around like-minded people, and that encouraged me to keep going as well. So even if it's a sports club, even if it's some kind of literature or club or anything like that, find yourself a space where you feel that you can be you, really. So, but yeah, I'll just stop rambling there.
Thank you so much for sharing and for asking that question. Great question. I know that each of the panelists can probably speak to this a little bit more themselves. So we're running a little bit short on time, but that's totally okay. It just means that we might have a few minutes less in breakout sessions, but Anushka, if we're all good to kind of push forward to our breakout sessions.
Yeah, no more questions, you're good.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, breakout rooms are obviously a bit short, and they're going to be 15 minutes now. And so before we all kind of head off, thank you so much to all our panelists for sharing their stories and all their advice. And you can speak to them further in breakout rooms. Great way to kind of learn a bit more about them and ask any questions. As you can see, all our panelists are very open and chatty and have lots of great advice to share. Hello, participants. I'm not sure if all of you are back here or not. I think you're slowly trickling in, but sorry to cut off any interesting conversations that were going on. But if any of you want the contact details for any of the panelists, then reach out to me and I can reach out to the panelists and see if they can pass along their LinkedIn. But that's the end of our Women in Engineering Finding Your Path event. So thank you all so much for coming along. Definitely stay in touch with the Women in STEM Society and Molly Fergusson Initiative. We run events throughout the year. You can find us on social media. And I've linked some upcoming Women in STEM events. But anyways, thank you so much to our panelists for coming along and speaking to us for the past hour and a half and sharing your stories and advice. I very much appreciate it, and I know all of our attendees will as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.